this business of improvising together gave rise to the style we call Dixieland, which is currently having a big revival. Perhaps there's no sound more exhilarating in all music than that of a Dixieland band blaring out its final chorus with all stops out, everybody improvising at the same time. Here is that Dixieland chorus of Sweet Sue. 1, 2, 3. But jazz is not all improvisation, not by a long shot. Much of it gets written down, and then it is called an arrangement. Now, the great days of arrangements were in the 30s, when big, startling swing arrangements were showing off the virtuoso bands of the time, like Benny Goodman, Artie Shaw, the Dorsey Brothers, Casa Loma, and so on. Jazz is very hard to write down. It's almost impossible to notate exactly those quarter tones we were talking about, for instance, or the various smears and growls and subtle intonations of jazz. Also, the rhythmic elements in jazz can only be approximated in notation. Therefore, much is left to the instincts of the player who is reading the music. But it seems to work because the instincts of these players are so deep and genuine. Now let's listen to, as we might have heard it back in 1938. Now remember that this arrangement was made for dancing. In 1938, we were all dancing. That brings up a very important point. Nobody seems to dance much to jazz anymore except the mambo lovers, and they're limited to those who are athletic enough to be able to do it. Can you do the mambo? I can't. Now, what has happened to dancing? It seems to me that long ago, in those days, we used to have a new dance practically every month. The Shag, the Peabody, the Lindy Hop, the Susie Q, the Big Apple, and all the rest of them. And nowadays, we are limited to dances that you have to take lessons to do. But what does this mean? It means that the emphasis has shifted to listening and away from singing and dancing. This change had to happen. First of all, the tremendous growth of the recording industry. We have learned to listen to jazz in a way we never did before. But more important than that, with the advent of more complicated jazz like swing and boogie-woogie and bop, our interest had to shift to the music itself and away from participation. In other words, our interest shifted to the notes that were being played, and we were interested in how fast they were being played and how well and with what originality. You can't, for example, listen to bop intelligently and dance, too, murmuring sweet nothings into your partner's ear. You have to listen as hard as you can to hear what's happening. So, in a way, jazz has become a sort of chamber music, an advanced, sophisticated art mainly for listening. It is full of serious influences of composers like Bartók and Stravinsky. It has minor ninths and wild chords and diminished fifths, and all kinds of crazy modern noises. The main thing is that it has become very, very serious. Now let's listen to a serious, modern, progressive arrangement of our old friend, Sweet Sue. Now, whether you call this weird piece cool or crazy or whatever you call it, the fact remains that it is bordering on serious concert music. In other words, the arrangement has begun to be a composition. If you take away the beat, you might not even know it's jazz at all. Now, why is it jazz at all? Simply because it is being played by jazz men on jazz instruments, and it has its roots in the soil of jazz and not in the soil of Bach. Now, where does this lead us in our investigation? There are those who have concluded from all this that here in this new weird jazz is the beginning, the real beginning of serious American music, and that the American composer has finally found his own expression. Of course, when they say this, they are intimating that all the symphonic works of all kinds of American composers, myself included, are nothing but stylized, personalized imitations of the European symphonic tradition. Sometimes I must say, I almost think they're right. They may have a point, but point or no point, I found myself recently in the same position, writing a concert piece for jazz band. This is the piece we referred to earlier in the session. We're going to play it for you now. It is called Prelude, Fugue, and Riffs. It's in 3 short continuous sections, a prelude for the brass alone, then a short fugue for the 5 saxophones, and then riffs for everybody. In one way or another, it uses all the elements we have been discussing during this time. I hope you will feel in it some of the special beauty of jazz that I felt when I was writing the piece. And I hope that our investigation of jazz today will help you see a little more clearly why I think of this piece as a serious piece of American music.